Asia or the Middle East. Not only is the public ignorant, how much did Congress know about the ethnic makeup of Iraq before the invasion? It was a fascinating editorial in 2006 in the New York Times by a man named Jeff Stein. It was called, "Can You Tell Sunni from Shiite?" He actually went around Congress polling congressmen, and then he went to the directors of the FBI, and he asked them to describe to them, what's the difference between the Sunni and the Shiite? And most of them couldn't do it. This is 2006. This is 5 years after 9/11. How little was understood about Iraq before we decided to invade? We live in an infotainment vacuum, and the disintegration of another country should not be undertaken out of ignorance. Does greed know no bounds? It's important to know that under Saddam, the oil industry was nationalized. Under the current government, it is open to exploration by international companies. But what has become of the life of the Iraqi people, besieged by ISIS now and other terrorist groups? What kind of decision was made in those days? And was the decision made out of knowledge or out of ignorance? You know, speaking about Central Asia, how much do we know about the part of the world? We have been at war there for 10 or more years. Can anybody name one fact about one group of people who lives there? When was the last time you saw a public interest documentary about Central Asia? Since we've been in war for over 10 years. I can vividly remember the first time I saw a documentary about Afghanistan. It was on the Al Jazeera network. 2 years ago, it was a story about the reconstruction of a music school. The first National Institute of Music, a Dr. Ahmed Sarmast, recruited street children and orphans to teach them both classical music and traditional Afghan music. It was in Kabul. It was very celebratory because the Taliban had banned music from 1996 to 2001. Has anyone else in this room seen a program about the life of the people of Afghanistan? Anyone? Anywhere? You don't count. Very few, very few. If American broadcast media aren't filling us in on the rest of the world, how about our educational system? In 2004, I was still teaching art in the public schools, and I was horrified when militants attacked a school in Beslan, Russia, killing hundreds of school children. I remember asking my students if they discussed the event in their history classes, and the answer was no. It's not part of the curriculum. My students sent teddy bear drawings and actual teddy bears to Beslan to show these kids solidarity. Don't you think it's time that our kids have some understanding of the contemporary world before they leave middle school or high school? Shouldn't the curriculum of today's students include contemporary current events, as well as world history and American history? How can we stop this decline into an American bubble of mostly local news and Hollywood e-news, where kids know about the lives of movie stars and know nothing about the lives of people around the world? This vacuum was created by our press and our educational system, and it leaves us with leaders who have a very superficial understanding of foreign affairs. What don't we know? And why don't we know it? We fell for very easy answers in Afghanistan and Iraq. What will be the next crisis? Will we be any better informed? I'm going to move on to the next painting, Dusk Railroad. Dusk Railroad is a painting about loss. And it's a painting about the loss of our Constitution. It was influenced by a painting by Edward Hopper called Railroad Sunset. It has an almost identical composition, except for the color and the addition of a watchtower from Delta. When we think of America, the American landscape, we think of Edward Hopper. The reason I used Constitution as a structure is that the America that we grew up with is an American ideal that has really been lost over the past 10 years. What has it done to the idea of America when we hold people indefinitely without a trial? The National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, which was passed by Congress, legalized the arrest of terrorism suspects by the military to be held indefinitely. Now, why should the military suddenly arrest people who are criminals? We have a police force. Police arrest criminals. Why does the Army have to get involved? But what's most disturbing about this law isn't that it was signed. What's disturbing is that it wasn't reported that it was signed. That was really disturbing. I was waiting and waiting to see if Obama would sign this law. And I found out a week later that he signed it on the internet. So I sent away for dozens of papers to find an article, one article. And I found one article in the Dallas Morning News. So what does that mean? Why did we find out about this? When did it become acceptable to the American people to have military arrest criminals and hold them indefinitely without trial? In 2013, the Feinstein-Lee Amendment, which would have explicitly restored trial by jury, was stricken in the new NDAA 2013 bill. Why is that? What's happening to our Constitution? As our constitutional protections slip away, and that's really the point of this meeting, we need to heed the warnings of people like William Binney. We've all heard about Edward Snowden. How many people know about William Binney? He preceded Edward Snowden. William Binney tried to warn the American people years ago that we were losing protections of the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. He was the head of Foreign Signals Intelligence for the NSA for 30 years. Right before 9/11, he devised the method of analyzing signals from the internet, foreign internet traffic, to highlight dangerous people through a program called Thin Thread. I love the names of these programs, they're like wild. This program was dismantled by the head of NSA, Michael Hayden, in favor of a much more expensive program called Trailblazer. Thin Thread cost $3 million to set up. Trailblazer cost $4 billion to set up. Trailblazer didn't work. Ultimately, it was discarded. And William Binney resigned in 2002 because he found out that the program he set up, Thin Thread, to analyze foreign intelligence was now going to be turned against the American people, all the American people, criminalizing our entire population. So he tried to warn a lot of people about the illegality of what NSA was doing. He went to Diane Rohr, a legislative aide on the House Intelligence Committee. He filed a secret complaint with the Pentagon's Inspector General. He went to the Department of Defense Inspector General, and all to no avail. He got nowhere. And in February 2007, his house was raided at gunpoint, and so was the house of Diane Rohr. They took away his computers and all his papers. And the question I have is, like, when someone like William Binney, who's so concerned about our Constitution and what's legal in terms of surveillance, when someone like him is raided at gunpoint, where does it leave the rest of us? Like, I feel that he's a patriot. I feel he deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and instead he's being accosted at gunpoint by the FBI and taken in like a common criminal. There's something wrong here. And it really behooves us to find out what it is. I'm sure Edward Snowden realized that going through channels, in this case, wasn't going to have the end result of alerting the American people to overwhelming surveillance. Our email, phone conversations, Google searches, Skype calls, Facebook entries. The FISA court, a secret court in Washington, set up to oversee the intelligence community, allows warrantless surveillance of our metadata since the passage of the Protect America Act of 2007. And where does that leave us? The advantage of William Binney's system thin thread is that he encrypted the personal data of the American people. Letting apathy get the better of us, we could say, I'm innocent. Who cares? I'm not doing anything wrong. What difference does it make? But where will this lead? In 5 years? Or in 10 years? Already our understanding of the term terrorism is getting broader and broader. Animal rights activists who film animal abuse are considered criminal in Iowa, Utah, and Missouri. Last week, in Pasadena, California, a young woman named Jasmine Richards, an organizer for a higher wage of $15 an hour with Black Lives Matter, was arrested and charged with domestic terrorism. $90,000 bail. Isn't that what's wrong? Isn't that the danger of the slippage? We let one thing go, and another thing go, and another thing go, and suddenly, people who are demonstrating for one thing or another, they're becoming criminalized. As the time goes on and the threat of international terrorism dissipates, the protection of lawful dissent in this country will erode. Lawful dissent. Did anyone else notice military tanks in Ferguson, Missouri? Military tanks were on the streets of Ferguson after the death or the shooting of the black man by the police. What are military tanks doing on the streets of America during a civil dispute? That wasn't a mirage. Let's hope it's not the beginning of a national nightmare. Martin Luther had a dream of what America can be. Let's all work to keep that dream alive. Thank you so much for coming.
This wonderful woman in this gallery because I learned so much from her.